Véi, eu precisava de pouco de água.
Vou pegar pro senhor. Vou pegar lá. Tá lacrado, ó.
Deixa eu tomar. Pode deixar.
Vou deixar assim, ó.
This press conference of the S&D Group, and it is my honor to have our group president, Iratxe García Pérez, with us, and of course, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the 35th president of the Republic of Brazil.
No, está
Lula.
funcionando.
It's not working?
It's not working?
Not working.
Okay, we will make it work. So welcome to all of you in the room here and also online. And of course, this event is happening within the context of the Latin America Day that we have today in the European Parliament, organized by the S&D Group. So let's see whether all will be fixed.
É que eu me enrosquei na máscara aqui. Aqui deu problema sério. Oh, não traduziu nada,
Sí.
cara.
Bueno, nos ha presentado.
Não entendi nada.
Solo nos ha presentado.
Vem aqui, testa aqui.
Esse aqui tá funcionando. Esse tá quebrado.
É muito azar, hein? O meu está quebrado.
Não tá funcionando mesmo, não. Pode dizer esse aqui, ó. Esse aqui tá funcionando.
Aumenta pouco aí.
Tá no máximo agora.
Então precisa pedir para o nosso companheiro falar pouquinho mais alto.
Then can you speak a bit louder?
Okay, perfect. So welcome to our press conference.
Sim, estou ouvindo.
I can hear. If you could speak a bit louder in the interpretation booth, I would be really happy.
Okay, so it is my pleasure to welcome Iratxe García Pérez, our group president, and Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the 35th president of the Republic of Brazil, who have la parole maintenant. And then afterwards, there's time for your questions here in the room and also to those of you online. Iratxe, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
I can't hear anything. I can't hear.
Thank you very much. This is an important day for the EU, for Latin America, and for everyone. Thank you very much for attending this press conference before the event we're just about to have in the hemicycle with our dear President, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and with former Prime Minister Rodríguez Zapatero and others from the Social Democrat family.
Común esa agenda.
We want to have a common agenda for the left and social democracy in Latin America because we share the same agenda when it comes to the major challenges we're all facing worldwide today. So we have common goals and we have to be able to stop what puts democracy in risk, European democracy and democracy in other areas and regions, as our colleagues from Brazil are fully aware of. So we have to face up to the populism of the extreme right, which is creating a very dangerous culture in our democracies. And we have to protect the rule of law, too. There are many other problems, many other common problems, global warming, trying to reduce poverty and inequality, the gender agenda, which is something so important worldwide. And at global level, we need to strengthen multilateral organizations, include trade as well. We should be able to talk about trade policy and impose the proper rules on trade. That is why we wanted to carry out this press conference. And this is the point of departure of a strengthening in cooperation between our countries. We're going to launch the Latin American Week or Days. It's an initiative of the S&D group in order to highlight that common agenda that we all share and that we all want to make progress on. We've already had a meeting before holding this press conference, and at that meeting, we spoke of how necessary it is and what a good idea it would be to sign a memorandum of understanding between the Workers' Party and the S&D group, as we've already done in other Latin American countries. As president of the S&D group, my first mission outside the EU was to Mexico and Cuba. And in Mexico, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Morena. So we want to strengthen the cooperation we have with the left in Latin America and leftist governments, because they share the same goals as we do. And this is very important, very necessary, given the present circumstances. So that memorandum might be signed when the S&D group visits Brazil. Our colleagues from the Workers' Party in Brazil have extended an invitation to us, so we're going to accept that invitation. We're going to travel to Brazil in order to go on sharing the goals that we have in common and the agenda we have in common. And there will be elections in the autumn in Brazil too. These are very important. They are key elections, and they will have a great impact throughout Latin America. So it's a very key moment, and we need to put a stop to Bolsonaro's government in Brazil for a series of reasons. He's authoritarian, and that endangers democracy. And because of his behavior, his criminal behavior, we could call it criminal, when it comes to the pandemic. We know what's happened in the past year in Brazil and how the life of so many of our colleagues and compatriots has been put into danger. He's destroying biodiversity and affecting climate change in Brazil. We are very aware of what's happening in the Amazon region. And he's a misogynist too, because he hates and attacks women. And in Brazil and throughout the rest of the world, the extreme right is doing likewise. So we need to bring about change in Brazil, and the S&D group will try and help achieve this. This is a key moment, I repeat, for both political entities. And we're going to strengthen our cooperation on the basis of mutual respect and the common challenges we face. We need to build more egalitarian societies. We need to create more just and fair societies, and we need to strengthen institutions. So today is an important day for our political group, and I would like to conclude by thanking Lula da Silva, President Lula da Silva, once again for sharing this very important day with us.
Confesso que eu gostaria de.
I confess that I wish I understood everything, but you need to speak a bit more slowly, Iratxe. But in any case, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to visit the European Parliament. It's been a long time since I've been here, despite knowing that there has been a lot of Brazilian participation in events in the European Parliament. I'd also like to make the most of this opportunity to meet with the press here in the European Parliament. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because the democratic and progressive forces and the socialist forces in this European Parliament have given a lot of attention to Brazil in the fight against the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, which was an attack on a very dignified woman. And I, of course, was not allowed to stand in 2018 because I was imprisoned. So I want to thank you for showing me solidarity in that time. Thank you to the solidarity from the European Parliament at that time and from many other countries. So I thank you for the solidarity you've shown. Solidarity is so important. It's extraordinary when you receive it. And we also have to show solidarity. We have to show solidarity when it's needed. And I learned the importance of solidarity. I was in a cell for 580 days, and every day I was there day in, day out, day and night. For 580 days, I could hear people saying good day to me, and that was encouragement to me. That allowed me to continue. I was encouraged to keep up the fight in Brazil, and now I'm free. The judge who was behind it is now suspected himself. The judge who prosecuted me lied during the investigation. He made it a highly politicized trial. He was himself Minister of Justice, and he was asked, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he couldn't say why. He said it was for unclear facts, undetermined facts, but he himself didn't know why he was prosecuting and sentencing me. But I've been declared innocent. I wish I'd brought some material, a little book that we have prepared explaining everything that happened. I wish I'd brought it, but unfortunately, we didn't bring that little book or brochure. But if we had it, we would give it out. Now, the third important thing that I'd like to mention is the following. It's such a joy to be able to speak to you about politics. We, in Brazil and elsewhere, are in an extremely difficult situation. If we look back to the 80s, we had the Washington Consensus. Back then, globalization was a success, but 40 years have passed. And now we understand that the discourse of the national state by Trump saying America first, that kind of message has spread to other parts of the world. It's a kind of fascism. It's a kind of extreme right. Bolsonaro today represents an important pillar of the fascist extreme right, Nazism. And Brazil doesn't deserve this. Brazil doesn't deserve what it's going through, because Brazil is a generous country. Its people are hardworking. And with this current government, we see social exclusion. During my presidency, Brazil was taken off the UN World Map of Hunger. And back in 2008, when there was the global crisis, 100 million people around the world lost their jobs, but we created 22 million jobs in that time. And we had a real success story in Brazil. But everything that we constructed was destroyed. It's been destroyed because the extreme right doesn't think about the working people. They don't think about the working poor. They don't think about indigenous people. They don't think about black people. They don't think about native Indian people. They don't think about LGBT people. What they're doing is destroying the Brazilian state. We have a government that doesn't know how to govern. So they're trying to sell everything off. They've sold off what they had and what they don't have. They have destroyed and are destroying Petrobras. Petrobras isn't just an oil company, wasn't just an oil company. It was the biggest company in Brazil. And it was the driving force behind our development and behind our investment. Petrobras invested the most in our territories and in our country. But now it's being sold off parts of the company being sold off, the gas pipes are being sold off. They're trying to sell Petrobras. And BNDES. And we were investing much more than the World Bank with Petrobras. Back in 2008, Brazil was the last country to become affected by the crisis and the first to exit it. And that was because we had been investing. We had been investing in infrastructure projects. But all of this is being torn down, destroyed in our country. Everything is being destroyed in a precise way. And Bolsonaro is a copy of Trump. So he's a poor copy of Trump. But Bolsonaro doesn't think. He doesn't have any ideas. He doesn't understand anything except talking nonsense, except spreading fake news, and except trying to destroy what we built. What he does all day is to try to hide and destroy everything that we've created. See, he wants to end the Bolsa Familia project, which is a social inclusion project, the biggest of its kind. It's recognized the world over and has been praised over the last 18 years. This is the biggest social inclusion program ever. And Bolsonaro wants to end Bolsa Familia. And there's another program called Filho do Brasil, which is a program that he wants to do as he prepares for the 2022 elections. I think that we in Brazil have to fight for democracy for the brilliant people. We want to prove that it is possible. We need to show that you can solve the problems of the poor people by including poorer people in the budget. You need to include them in the nation's budget, in the local budget. You have to get the economy working for them. And that will help everyone. And that was the miracle we achieved in Brazil. And this miracle will happen again, because we're going to have a major social inclusion policy. And I want to remind you of something. It was my privilege as president to be president at a fortunate time in Latin America, because it wasn't just Brazil that was improving. Argentina and Chile under Michelle Bachelet was improving. Argentina under Cristina was improving. Our continent in Uruguay was improving. In Paraguay it was improving. Under Evo Morales in Brazil, in Bolivia, under Chavez in Venezuela. We had better ties with Colombia. We had better ties with Peru. We had better ties with Rafael, who passed away in Brussels. We had extraordinary ties with him as well. So we went through an extremely good period of much greater social inclusion. That was what happened in 2004 in Latin America. Alas, all of this is being razed to the ground. It's being destroyed country by country. And we urgently need to restore democracy in Brazil so that people can dream again, and so that we have democracy in all countries, and so especially that poor people have an opportunity to live dignity. And that's exactly why I'm here today, to talk a bit about the problems and the solutions. And I'm eager to listen to your questions and to answer those questions.
Eu não controlo.
I'm not the one who's in charge of timekeeping. It's Iratxe, president of the S&D group, who will be in charge of timekeeping. But there's no taboo questions. There's no questions that are out of band. If I can answer, then I will answer it. If I can't answer it, I'll get someone else to answer it.
Thank you, Lula da Silva and Iratxe García Pérez. We go with the first question here, then we move to the left. Yes, please, could you please indicate your medium, name and medium, and to whom the question is? Thank you.
Hola, soy Dani Rovirosa.
I'm Daniel Orirosa from the FE agency. I have a question or maybe two for Lula da Silva. First of all, on the protests that there are in Cuba at the moment, I wanted to know what your opinion is on these protests, both of you actually, and what do you think about with the withdrawal of accreditation to the FE agency? And then a question directed at President Lula. You met with the S&D here. Yesterday you met with Josep Borrell, the High Representative. I don't know, I'm beginning to think that you're going to stand at the next elections next year in Brazil. Is that the case?
Queria entender a primeira pergunta.
Just to make sure I've understood the first question. Can I just ask the person interpreting for me to speak slightly louder?
Eu lhe confesso. Olha, eu possivelmente eu seja político.
Well, perhaps I'm a bit of a different political figure. As president of Brazil, I went to visit a big technological company specialized in agricultural technology. And I went there, and the workers, when I visited, were demonstrating against the government. And I decided to go and walk with them and be with the crowd. And they didn't bother me. I think that protesting is a right. People can say what they like and what they don't like. I am not bothered or disturbed by demonstrations. All politicians love applause, but they don't like disruption. But that is politics. So when you go out campaigning, you wave your hands and kiss babies. And then later on, you have to be in a guarded car and you have to shut yourself away. So perhaps these people have the right to be discontent. So I think instead of shutting yourself away as a politician, you have to go out there and speak with the people to understand why they're protesting. I think that Cuba is similar. It has something going on that we can't accept. It's not fair, acceptable, normal, or democratic for human rights to be violated as they have because of the blockade for 70 years. It's not normal. The US must learn what has happened with Cuba, and the US must allow Cuba to decide its own destiny. When I was president, I spoke with Bush, and I said, well, why doesn't the US accept what's happening in Cuba? What's the problem? It was an eternal, never-ending Cold War. It's as if the US was telling off a naughty, rebellious son. Well, I wish the US would have the generosity and the grandeur to accept that the Cuban people must determine their own destiny. But then, when the Cuban people go and protest, they need to be spoken with, and it needs to be made clear, and politicians need to understand why they're protesting. I have seen many protests against me, and I understand those protests. There may be people who are in favor of me, some who are against me. So you just have to learn and then potentially change. As long as I live, I will say that the US must end the blockade against Cuba.
Y como se me ha hecho
And the question was also directed at me, so I wanted very briefly to respond. As regards the withdrawal of the credentials of the FE journalist, well, we're of course against that decision in Cuba. You must have the freedom of expression, and the media should be free to do their work. So we're totally against that withdrawal of the accreditation and the credentials of that journalist. But about a year and a half, as I said when I first spoke, I was in Cuba. And I made our position very clear on that occasion, that we are here to defend human rights. When I was in Havana just before the pandemic, I asked for the EU to follow Juan Daniel Ferrer's trial and that he be freed from jail. And he was indeed freed. So that was a success. As President Lula da Silva has said, I, too, am committed to defending human rights in Cuba, and I'm also against the blockage of the American state in Cuba because it's causing so much harm, and it doesn't allow that country to develop. And I think that our position is quite clear on that score.
I would like to take the next question.
Na verdade, eu tinha deixado de responder.
I hadn't answered the second question, which was about whether I will stand again in the Brazilian elections. That was the best question I didn't answer, but I'll try to answer now. I think that what we are living through is a very particular moment in Brazilian politics. It's not today that it's today that my party is attacked. Our social inclusion policy was never accepted by the political elite in Brazil. But our social programs, the social programs we put forward, have been copied by many others. The Bolsa Familia was recognized as the best social program ever, but many of the Brazilian political elite were against it. They said that by providing support, vagabonds, lazy people were being created. They said that people wouldn't work because they received support. But people who say things like that don't understand anything about people. They don't understand the basic tenets of society. They don't understand anything. That's why my party will have to put forward a candidate for presidency of the Republic. And then in February or March, I will decide whether I stand or not. It depends on whether the party wants me to be a candidate or not. Can we find like-minded allies? Because we need to have someone who stands. We need to win the elections. And at the same time, we have to rebuild Brazil. Just let me give you some information here to the press in the European Parliament. When we won the elections back in 2002, we had 12% inflation. Brazil had 12% unemployment, and Brazil had debt of $30 trillion to the international community. We didn't have money to pay for imports. At the same time, we had internal public debt, which was around 17% of GDP. Many of my friends, many journalists said to me at that time that we wouldn't be able to govern Brazil because it was broken. But in a mere 3 years of governance, we paid back the money to the IMF, the 30 trillion. We reduced GDP debt from 70% to 32%. And while the Workers' Party was in government, we were the only G20 government to grow every year. And we had the best social inclusion policy ever. So we proved that it was possible to care for Brazil, and we made poor people a priority. And we turned education into something that was seen as an investment, not as expenditure. Care and nutrition is an investment, not just a cost. Scholarships for poor people is not mere expenditure, it's investment. So all of that money was investment. You have to change the other logic, and we can't just have poor people paying in Brazil. Just let me tell you that income tax in Brazil is mostly paid by poorer people because tax is taken at source from their payslip, and wealthier people don't pay tax in Brazil. Let me tell you that the wealthy are not paying income tax, nor are they paying capital tax. Every day, it's clear that there is an easy solution to help Brazil. It's by putting poor people in the budget and making wealthier people tax. That will help to improve the situation in our country. That's why the Workers' Party will put forward a candidate. I'm willing, I'm motivated, I'm in good health, and I am confident about the future of Brazil. So I believe that we are capable of improving Brazil. So that's why the Workers' Party will have a candidate for 2022, and we're intending to win the elections so that Brazil once again is a respected country on the international scene.
Can only take one more question. I promised it. Please go ahead, one more, and then we have to go. Maybe then we can take them afterwards. So one more, and then please indicate to whom, and only one. Thank you.
Quickly, one.
Ana Lázaro.
Okay.
Sí,
You
bueno,
go, please.
Ana Lázaro de Euronews.
From Euronews. I wanted to mention the Cuba issue with President Lula da Silva. Apart from the context, what do you think that today a demonstration was prohibited and one of the opposition leaders is still in home arrest?
And after.
Okay. Then we take, so one for President Lula, and then we take one here. Yes, please go ahead. And then we have the reply.
Alô? Oi, eu sou Paloma Varon, da Rádio França Internacional. E se eu puder fazer duas perguntas.
I'm from France International. I'd like to put two questions. You said to Paris Match that you'd be candidate. So now there's a doubt. And yesterday you basically did a campaign speech. That's what I heard from those who spoke with you. Basically, you're campaigning. So I want to know the truth. Are you going to be candidate or vice candidate? And then what about the Mr. Temer?
Eu não entendo.
I don't agree that I was making campaign speeches. I didn't ask for anyone to vote for me. Because that's what you do when you campaign, you ask for a vote. I was giving a speech thanking those Brazilians who live here for their solidarity. They had spent a lot of time showing their solidarity to me. So I wouldn't call it a campaign speech. If the PT, the Portuguese, the Workers' Party were to ask me, I would stand, but I didn't say to Paris Match that I was going to stand. Then the second issue. I've had 8 ministers for the economy, many other ministers. And Temer is a serious person, but when you're choosing the vice president, that person can eventually become president. And the vice needs to be someone who works with the president. I have a lot of respect for anyone, and there's nothing in secret. Politics is a bit like football. everyone plays during the game, but then you forget about what happened during the game, and then you meet each other afterwards. Now, I think everyone wants to win in politics. I have a lot of respect for Okko. I'm not talking about the issue of vice presidency because we're not there yet. I have to first decide if I'm going to be candidate. Then we will decide who might be vice president. Now, the subject of Cuba. I didn't completely understand the question. I haven't been following the news in Cuba today because I've just been preparing for other things. I only have the information that you've given me on Cuba. So after my work here at the European Parliament, I'll go back to the hotel and I'll see what's happened in the world and I'll follow the news. So your question, well, can be put to my press officer. You can see that it's this charming person over here. You can put the question to my press officer and the press officer will answer.
Then I think you will have a very busy job because I guess there are more questions in the room and maybe also online. Thank you, Iratxe García Pérez. Thank you, Lula da Silva. And of course, if you are around, please join us now at 5 in the plenary for our public event on the Latin America Day. Muchas gracias. Obrigada.
Thank you.